Welcome to the Fit Mess. My name is Jeremy. His name is Jason. And here we talk about all things sort of AI and health and wellness and where they intersect to try to make sure that you are getting the best information you can to use these tools for your benefit while avoiding many of the pitfalls that come with them. Jason, today's episode comes from a real life conversation you had with a soon to be family member.
My future son-in-law and I were discussing, oddly enough, the who would win in a fight, 100 men versus a gorilla.
Okay, I'm going to take us off the rails immediately because this keeps coming up in my feed. Where did this come? I don't follow the memes. I'm not hip. I don't know what's down. I don't have the 411. What is the deal with this gorilla versus man thing? Is this like the bear in the woods thing with women? What's happening
I
here?
think if you're expecting me to be a substitute for relevance or coolness, that might be problematic to your desired outcome.
Okay.
I did
I'll
not
ask
hear
AI
about
later.
this right until my kids told me, and I started seeing it on the news. I started seeing it on CNN and NBC, and then it was floating around in all of my social profiles. And uh, I haven't seen it on Al Jazeera or BBC. I haven't seen it on Fox. I haven't seen it on Drudge. I haven't seen it on like the 10,000 news sources I try to collect information from. All of them, but I've seen it on a few.
Yeah.
And the origin is, I guess some TikToker, mentioned would this happen? Who would win? And it just exploded because a bunch of men were like, I could beat up a gorilla. I could beat up a bear.
Wrong.
Like, no, you couldn't. And then it became, realistically, how many men would it take to do these things? Somebody said 1,100. So we went round and round, okay, so a gorilla's 10 times stronger than a human being, roughly, about double the
This is
weight of
not
an
the
average
topic I
male.
thought we'd be talking about
But we have to
today.
get through this.
That's right.
So we had a discussion about it, and my son-in-law was very much so like, 100 humans, gorilla doesn't stand a chance. I'm like, I don't know, like there's a lot of environmental factors and pieces that go into this. Maybe the gorilla runs better. It's going to run people over. He's like 100 people jumping at a gorilla all at once. I'm like, that's not how fights happen. Like, that's not how things occur. Like, you're not going to get 100 people to sneak up. Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting gorillas. Like, that's not going to be a thing. So
Right.
you're going to have to approach slowly. So eventually, I'm like, all right, let me consult ChatGPT. And I start poking through it and I look at it and I find an answer. And ChatGPT is basically spitting back the same bullshit that would come out of my head. So I
Sure.
immediately start to question it. Uh, and Jared, my son-in-law, is like, yeah, so like, is this a good source of information? He goes, I don't think it is. He goes, I don't think it's a good way to learn. I don't think it's a good way to look things up because somebody controls all the rights to this information, all the LLMs, all these pieces. And there are some things that he was talking about. Like, and I've worked in this field for the better part of 20 years. And he's telling me things that I know, like the technology is not set up to do that. And there are things that it's set up to do that he says that it can't do. I'm like, but it does. Like, it's just some misinformation, I guess, that most people have around this topic. And the guy's really smart and really capable and really competent. And as we're kind of going through these pieces, he gets to the point where he's like, look, I don't trust AI because the learning process that I have to go through to understand something, if I can go to AI and say, summarize this book for me, and it gives me a good summary, he's like, did I actually learn anything? Or am I just taking the summary as the thing to understand and know, and then passing this off as my own learned and earned knowledge?
Sure.
I'm like, sure. So what you're describing there is cliff notes. Like, we've had those forever. Oh, and by the way, your entire experience, because we have history classes and because we have written history and oral history, is in fact the same thing because you didn't live all the experience. Like when we were in the cave together and Grok was up there talking about, oh, Ola and I go and fight bear and we stab, stick, and poke. Like, you didn't experience that, but you got to experience the story and understand those pieces when they go, and if we make stick sharp, it poke bear better. Oh, okay, no shit. Well,
Right.
great. That's now learned knowledge. You can take that, absorb that, and put that into your practice. But it's this notion that AI is somehow um, shortcutting things for people, which it is. So do textbooks, so does literacy. I mean, so do all these things that take the part of this.
Yeah.
It's why we have trade schools Because when you go into a trade school, you don't go into a trade school, typically speaking, and not go through some kind of classroom learning. Typically, there's some interaction that you're going to go through, and you're going to read things and you're going to understand them. Like, there's not a lot of jobs out there that don't require you to have literacy. Like, it's part of it. And the communicating and passing information along works that way. These AI tools are a further extrapolation of that, right? Like, the
Right.
amount of information they can send to you is much higher, and you can use them and rely on them for different things. And we had a discussion last week where we talked about the fact that people fed their symptoms into an AI system and it performed, statistically much better than the doctors did in the same exercise and diagnosis process. But we also talked about the fact that, okay, this is great that it can go through and run these search filters and extract this information and look at it. And there's all kinds of problems with Western medicine and distraction. That being said, what if AI is wrong? What if, it diagnosed the right thing 70% of the time, but 30% of the time the diagnosis was completely off? And you're like, well, it told me to go eat bleach to take care of this problem. So I went and ate bleach and then died. You don't get to sue AI for malpractice.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you've taken this on yourself. And again, the Dunning-Kruger effect in full force has led you to do things that are stupid, and you wind up paying a price for that. I would venture to say that Google, like, since the invention of search engines, really, so like way back the Alta Vista days and Yahoo and everybody else, since then, this has been a progressive problem. It's just that now it happens much quicker and it feels much more authoritative because the thing we're asking questions is actually conversational and feels like we're talking to an expert, even though it's just written. That's where I think we're running into snags, because my daughter's fiance is 23,
Mhm.
and it it's not like he's not used to having to absorb and adopt new technologies all the time. This is a new technology, but he's immediately wary of it because he's like, I already don't trust the internet. I already don't trust these things. I already don't trust these sources of information. Like, okay, why do you trust this one less? And then I really
Yeah.
had to think about it. Like, is there a legit reason to be more worried about this uh, summarization, extrapolation, and regurgitating of data than it is at other standpoints? And my my gut says be afraid, and my brain says, yeah, but you're fucking afraid of everything for the same reasons. Like,
Well, but there's a couple things to consider with this, and one is, up until now, we've had to rely on human beings to write a lot of what we're finding online. So it's all coming from somebody who theoretically, hopefully, did some sort of research before writing that thing that ended up in front of my eyeballs. But now the machines are writing based on what's already existing, and it's going to be probably wrong more than people were because it's pulling from all these different data sources and putting things together that don't necessarily go together. And so when we read that summary of the 10 web pages we might have looked at on our own, that summary might be based on more inaccurate information and spit back to us. And but I also wonder like how much, I mean, just using my own experience, when I ask Google a question and it spits back an AI answer, along with the million web pages that go with that answer, I tend to read like the paragraph, right? Like I get a quick idea of its full thought on what the thing is. So just like when I use the tool Blinkist to take a book, condense it down to 15 minutes, play it at double speed in 7 minutes, I take that information and I decide, did I get anything out of that? Is there more I want to explore here? Because that's my approach to that sort of a tool is like, I've got enough. Have I heard, is there anything here that I'm like, wow, I've never heard that before. I must know more. Or am I like, okay, it's another self-help book. Get some good sleep, eat some shit, like go for a run, you'll feel better. I don't need to go read that 300-page book now because I just got the summary that tells me I've I've heard this information before. But when somebody blows my mind with like, here's how to experience life at a slower pace and to get more out of it, great, I'm gonna go get the book now and I'm gonna read more, and I want that firsthand knowledge from that person. So I think to me, like my experience tells me that it's really not that different. It speeds up the process of now I don't have to click 10 things to get a quick paragraph to tell me if I'm interested enough to learn more. But I do have to take with a grain of salt that summary because I believe that it's pulling from its own resources and probably more full of shit than those 10 links might have been if I found them on my own.
so if you take the term intelligence and you look at that from a contextual perspective, whether it's artificial or naturally derived, intelligence is basically taking information signals inbound towards you and turning them into something and interpreting something into something of use and of value. And really, what we're talking about with most LLMs and all the chat GPT and AI that we interact with are inference models. So it's, you know, is this thing close to this thing? And if so, they kind of have a relationship. And can I infer enough information to build enough of a response that actually seems like it sounds legit and like it's good? That's exactly what human brains do. Like, that's how we learn. That's how we process information. And the books that you read and the things that you read online, there is another set of intelligence ripping through that and maybe
Mhm.
making mistakes. So,
Right.
yeah, like the idea is that the aggregate idea of having lots of different intelligences out there, going through and looking at these things, self-checking themselves, cross-checking themselves, trying to make sure that they're actually saying the right thing and moving in the right direction is is really how we as a society and as a species have grown and moved forward. Now we have this new thing that does a lot of that for us. And it means that a lot of people don't have to take the time to actually learn and understand these things to actually have a decent level of information and knowledge on it. That's not a bad thing. Because really, when you think about it, these chat GPT pieces and all the generative AI, you're essentially using them like you would a tool, like a cell phone or a browser. Jeremy, if I came to you and I said, here is a shovel, um, and a battery backup, go build me a cell phone. How many lifetimes would it take you?
Uh, I'd have to ask AI. I don't know.
That's my point.
Right.
We use shit all the time that we have no fucking idea how it's built, how it's made. I mean, because it becomes part of the user experience. The back end of all these GPTs is the same.
Before we continue this conversation about AI accountability, I want to take a moment to share something that's been really helpful for me, especially when researching complex topics like this. You know that feeling when you're really just dialed in, like you're processing information clearly and making connections effortlessly? That's exactly what I've been experiencing with Magic Mind's mental performance shot. It's just a couple of ounces, but it's loaded with great stuff like lion's mane mushroom, vitamin B2, B3, B12, ceremonial matcha, ashwagandha, and more, bringing all these amazing ingredients together to help you have that focused, clear, calm energy you need to get through your day. As we talk about augmenting human intelligence with AI tools, I'm reminded that taking care of our own cognitive performance is just as important. Magic Mind has been helping me maintain that perfect balance of focus and creativity. It's becoming an essential part of my morning routine that puts me in the optimal mindset for critical thinking, something we definitely need when evaluating AI generated information. That's one of my favorite little productivity hacks, and it can also be yours. And it can be yours for 40% off your subscription. Just head over to magicmind.com/fitmess40. Again, magicmind.com/fitmess40. Get 40% off your subscription. And that's only available to the first 10 of you that go there. Head there now. You won't regret it.
But I mean, realistically, at some point, um, we have to start accepting the fact that these artificial sources of truth um, are still sources of truth. And we have to delineate between the concept of truth and fact. And we don't do that enough already. Like, we look at the news, and news is all about interpretation of facts for the most part these days because it's editorialized.
Yeah.
But even the things that produce the mechanisms for how it is we're going to understand the world and the practical formulas behind that, like textbooks, math, English, especially history, those things get rewritten all the time to be editorialized towards a certain perspective. And I mean, let's use math for a very simple mechanism. Common Core made the country, throw their hands up in outrage because the mechanism was different than the rote math techniques that we'd used before. And the whole point of it was to get schools to go through and agree on a curriculum that at a national level they can repeat everywhere. And my kids brought home their Common Core math, and I looked at it and I'm like, fuck this. It's so different from what I learned and know. There's no way this can be useful. And then I started reading the studies and the returns on it. They're like, well, the way that it's been put together and the other international groups that have used these pieces, here's what their success rate's been. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, my kids do math now, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I can't figure that out. And I'm pretty good at math. And I've taken the Common Core stuff and I fit it into AI and looked at it. And you know what? It actually is pretty good. It is another way of doing this. It is effective. Like it does do all these things. So I had to get past my own bias that the way that I learned something was the right way to do it. Because the reality is that knowing, learning, and understanding, whether it's artificial or naturally derived, we're all just things trying to sort shit, put it into something that's cognizantly recognizable, so we can pilot these meat suits of ours through this, scary mystical world that we live within.
Yeah.
And the more we absorb and the more we, I guess, give in or surrender our ignorance to an artificial intelligence and let it feed us, yeah, they're going to have homogenization of ideas and thoughts and processes and all those pieces. But fucking TV does that to you. So does the internet. Like a million things already do this to you. Like, why is this one so much worse? And I guess the idea of this one's so much worse because random people can make things that can fool the human being into thinking that it's somebody else that does these things, blah, 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 blah. Yes, all those things happen. Information is fucking nebulous and ephemeral and weird. Agreed. But this tool's effective and it makes great cat memes. So people aren't going to give it up anytime soon.
All right. Well, let me get your take on this then. The very famous scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson has repeatedly predicted that AI will be the end of the internet as we know it.
I foresee the day where AI becomes so good at making a deep fake that the people who believed fake news as true will no longer think their fake news is true because they'll think their fake news was faked by AI. The day that happens, the entire role of the internet as a source of objectively true information will implode. And that will be the death of the internet, 1992 to 2028. Rest in peace. And the internet will return to just cat videos because AI will be so good at faking news.
So, the idea that everything becomes total bullshit or is completely untrustable because the deep fakes are so good that nobody can discern them. So the people that believe in the fake news start thinking everything is fake news.
Right.
Because
so do they switch off? Do they
no.
actually find themselves driving back to a library to read these old-fashioned books to get their information?
Well, no, it's confirmation bias, right? I mean, when you're talking about people that there's a very large percentage of the population that doesn't have ideas. They have beliefs. And ideas are great. You can change an idea. Like you can get new information and go, oh, well, now I think something different. A belief is different. We are, for lack of a better term, hardwired to accept beliefs and do whatever kind of mental gymnastics we have to find things that support those beliefs, because that's what is relied upon us for survival within our tribes.
We have to go so much farther to go from idea to belief. To adopt an idea as a belief, it has to become a part of you. I mean, religion, for example, is a faith. It is a belief in a story that becomes a part of who you are and the way you live your life and every decision that you make.
Yeah. Well, and there's two sides to that, right? So, it can be really hard to go from an idea to a belief, but it's a lot easier to have no idea and then have a belief thrust upon you as an idea, adopt it, and then that becomes the fundamental part of who you are. I think that happens a lot. Like, I would say most people that subscribe to a religion, that's the path for how they got there. Like their parents did these things, they picked it up as tradition, they ran forward with it, and of course it's true. Because
and politics too. Politics is the same way. I mean,
absolutely, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, we all have our camps and our tribes, and we don't want to not be in our tribes. And information and the way that we collect information and the way that we distribute information, it almost always comes from a biased source, and that always comes from somebody that has a belief about something, and that's why it is they're trying to spread this across. Like, I mean, I don't have an answer for atheism. I mean, because the idea of atheism is that it's lack of belief, but it has a lot of the same kind of tenets to it, where it's
It's all. I
like,
mean, it's a belief on its own, though. It's a belief in nothing more than
yeah,
it's
it's a
a
belief in I mean, it's not necessarily nihilism or anything
right.
like that, but yeah. And then you have agnostics, which I would argue are the scientists. People like go, I think it's like this, but I don't actually
Uh,
fucking know.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
how you live your life in any of those extremes. If you're living your life in a way other than I don't know, you're living a life of belief. The idea is to be open and to be understanding of these pieces and have enough neuroplasticity to go through and change your mind. If you can't change your mind about an idea, then it's a belief. Period. If you can't argue the other side in a reasonable way, then you are arguing for your belief, not an idea. Because I can look at the most horrible things out there and I can think through the counter argument all the way through end to end. And I can come up with enough premises to go, okay, well, I could see from this perspective how somebody might feel that way. I think they're fucking nuts. I disagree with them. I think it's abysmal and awful. But I can understand and empathize to some degree and connect with that kind of outrageous bullshit. If you can't do that, then you have a belief, not an idea. And we have enough belief. We have enough believers. I mean, there's people that believe bullshit all the time. I don't think AI makes us any better or worse, because I think you're going to ask AI questions and you're going to prompt engineer it to have it spit back the response
Yeah,
that you want to see.
yeah. I mean, I think ultimately it does where we started with this conversation. You said something about doing it faster. It gets you to that belief point faster. It takes a bunch of data, puts it together for you to form a idea or a belief faster than you would have. And is that good or bad? I don't know. I'm agnostic about it. I don't know, but
which is the right attitude to have, by the way.
I mean, it's made my life easier. I mean, I was gonna joke that, like, I got your one paragraph text message about this as an idea for a podcast episode. I threw it into AI and said, give me an outline. I've got a 3-segment, 9-section outline for an episode that I haven't looked at once, but I like to use this as a tool again to give give me something I can sink my teeth into, and do I care enough about the output to do something with it? And ultimately, like, I got some ideas about like some questions I wanted to ask you and some directions I wanted to go. I didn't follow the outline, but I was able to take your 3 sentences and turn it into a potentially 30-minute conversation,
right?
if I followed the path.
And that's the crazy thing, is that, like, is this path worth following? So you have to ask yourself that every time you read these things. Does this make sense? Am I going in the right direction? Do I think it's going to have an output that's actually of value? If you're not doing that with everything that you look at, read, write, and interact with, you're fucking up.
Right. That's not thinking. That's just following, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Like at that point, if you can be replaced by the ChatGPT prompt, you should be. Like, your unique value is understanding these things to try to bring perspective into something in this world. And I'm not talking about your unique value. I'm talking about every individual's unique value.
Right.
As individuals, our unique value is our ability to discern things that bring our own perspective into those events. And how we experience that and how we go about looking at those pieces, that's the big existential question. Like, is AI a replacement for religion? Is AI a replacement for belief systems? Is AI a replacement for writing Perl scripts, for writing code? Like, is it a replacement for going through and creating new graphics and new music? I mean, I made a song out of nowhere using ChatGPT. I used one of the follow-on GPTs to go through and write a song in the style of Bauhaus about real estate in Everett, Washington. Because my wife got home, who's a real estate agent, got home
I think
from a
I heard that on the
conference.
radio the other day. That's quite a song.
Well, but the thing is, when I played it, I'm like, shit, this actually isn't bad. Like,
That's funny.
Nothing really went into it. Like, and I can download the copyright license to it, and I own it like I'm the creator. I'm like, I'm not
The real question, though, is, can AI show me a visual representation of 10,000 gorillas versus one man? That's what I want to know.
Absolutely. Oh, I saw this. 10,000 versus a million. This thing is amazing. Like, it's just this mass filtering down. And, like, in these quantities, you're talking about a very, very different setup.
Come on.
The gorillas are all, like,
Here we go.
pumped to fight with each other. I like that they're all like Paul Rudd too. Like all of the men, it's like, will 1,000,000 Paul Rudds beat 10,000 Cocos? I like that how the Cocos are running like upright too. Like, by the way, for all of you watching this or listening to this, just go into YouTube and look for 10,000 gorillas versus.
Yeah. I don't like how they just fling the bodies, because in reality, the gorillas would rip their arms off and beat them to death with them. I mean, that's what would really happen.
Well, and where's all the blood?
Right.
I mean, where are the parts?
See, I don't trust this at all. This is, I find to be completely false, and I'm going to choose to not accept it as fact.
Yeah, again, you don't have to. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's always the argument, are we actually living in the real world? Is this a simulation? These are big existential questions. And I mean, some of the arguments you can read about this topic, it's hard to disagree with some of what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also not practical.
Right.
Like, okay, what if we're living in a simulation? Well, I can't fucking do anything about that. Like,
right.
I'm going to keep going until someone gives me a cheat code to get around this shit.
Right.
Like,
This game sucks. Where's my upright, left, right, A, B,
exactly.
select, start? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, no, like that's a legit question. That being said, we experience the world through our senses, and ChatGPT experiences the world through its senses, and its senses are basically data input, and then they spit out data, and then they get the input from other people around them. It's got visual cues. It can see in light spectrums that we can't see in. It can hear things that we can't see. It can extract data much faster than we can. Like, all these things are great, but it doesn't really have a lot of motivation from the ChatGPT perspective. What they have discovered is when they give it motivation, depending on the motivation they give it, gives you very different outputs. Like, there's the AIs that, decided that they would form their own communication language and start talking to each other, and nobody could understand it, but the AIs could clearly communicate in a way that we couldn't understand. There's the AIs that they went through and they put forth the problem, keep all people safe. And one of the AIs was like, cool, I'm going to melt all of you in nuclear warfare, and then we never have to worry about you being in danger again. It's like, okay.
Problem solved.
Right. And they're not unreasonable answers.
Right.
I look at it, I'm like, oh, fuck, I get that. You need to apply that to everything that you work in every possible way. AI is just another form of intelligence. And some of them are your crazy fucking weird 3% uncle. Like, that's just going to happen. And you got to learn how to filter that shit out. And stop fighting, this idea that there's so much fear and trepidation around these pieces, because there shouldn't be. I mean, it's just another source of information to make you do dumb shit faster, which is how we're going to use it.
So you have to critically think, but faster.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest part is critically think before you ask your question. If you think critically before you ask your question, you're going to get a better answer. If you ask a stupid question, you're probably going to get a stupid response.
That's my experience. And I've got a lot of it.
Yes. Yeah, me too. Like, most of the wealth of my knowledge has been derived from me making mistakes.
Yeah.
And those mistakes normally start with me not asking the right questions up front.
Yeah. Failure is a hell of a teacher.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's enough for 1 week. I want to go watch some more gorillas fighting humans videos. I'm going to try and find a better one, and maybe we'll bring that next time.
Sounds fun.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. If you've gotten any value out of this, please do share it with somebody who could also benefit from it. There's links to do that at our website, thefitmess.com, and we'll be back there in about a week. And quickly, don't forget, head over to magicmind.com/fitmess40 to get 40% off your subscription to Magic Mind. I know I can't get through my day without it. I think you'll feel the same once you try it. magicmind.com/fitmess40. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
We know this podcast is amazing and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that these knuckleheads don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.